All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really interesting debate in the world of modern applications. We're going to break down two major approaches, function as a service versus object as a service. I mean, just think about that for a second. What if you could build these huge, powerful applications and just never have to think about a server? That's the dream, right? That's the core promise of serverless computing, and it has totally changed the game for developers. So, yeah, let's dive right in. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the model that really put serverless on the map, function as a service, or what you'll almost always hear called Faas. So with Faas, the whole idea is you write these tiny, super focused chunks of code. They do one thing and one thing only. Think of it like, I don't know, processing a credit card payment or resizing a photo someone just uploaded. An event happens, like that upload, your little function just pops into existence, does its job, and then poof, it's gone. You don't manage anything, the platform handles it all. Now that sounds amazing, right? Super simple, super clean. But there's a catch. And to really get our heads around this fundamental challenge with Faas, we're going to try to build something dead simple, a basic website visitor counter. And this brings us smack into the middle of the biggest headache in the Faas world, managing state. The big question is, where does the data go? Or to put it another way, how in the world does a function remember anything? Okay, so if you were coding this, your first instinct would probably be something like this, right? Just create a simple variable, visit_count, and every time the function runs, add one to it. It seems totally logical, it should work, but as you might have guessed, there's a huge problem here. And here's why it breaks. That little visit count variable, it's going to get reset constantly. See, every time a new visitor hits the site, your function could be starting from scratch in a totally fresh environment. It's like it has amnesia. The function has absolutely no memory of what happened before. So that counter is useless. This table really nails the core difference. On the one hand, you have Faas, which is all about pure logic. It forgets everything the second it's done. To remember anything, it needs an external brain, like a database. But on the other hand, this other approach we're going to look at, OaaS, actually combines the logic with the data. It lets the thing itself remember its state. So what's the solution? How do we make our Faas counter actually work? Well, you have to give it that external brain. You have to connect it to an external database or some kind of storage service. Think something like Amazon S3 or DynamoDB. And what this means is that for every single visitor, our supposedly simple function has to do this little dance. It wakes up, it has to go knock on the database's door to ask for the current count, bring that number back, add one to it in its head, and then go knock on the database's door again to save the new number. I mean, yeah, it works, but suddenly it's way more complex, probably more expensive, and you've just introduced more places where things can go wrong. It's exactly this kind of complexity that made people think, there has to be a better way. And that led to a totally different paradigm, one called Object as a Service, or OaaS. The whole goal here is to bring state back into the picture and build a much, much cleaner solution. So instead of thinking in these little stateless functions, OaaS says, hey, let's build with stateful objects. If you've ever done any object-oriented programming, this is going to feel really familiar. You just define a class, you give it some data and some methods to act on that data, and here's the magic part, the OaaS platform just handles saving that object state for you automatically behind the scenes. Wow, okay, look at this. This code just perfectly shows the difference. In the OaaS version, it's so clean, it's beautiful. The state, that count variable, is just part of the object itself. There are no database calls, no fetching, no saving. None of that is in your code. You just tell the object, hey, increment your count, and the platform takes care of making sure that value sticks around. It just works. All right, so the visitor counter is a nice, simple example, but let's really put these two models to the test with something way more complex, something from the real world, a smart parking lot system. So think about what this system needs to do. It has to keep track of every single spot in real time. Is it vacant, occupied, reserved? It needs to let drivers book a spot from their phone. It has to talk to actual hardware, like the little green and red lights above each space. And it needs to be dynamic, right? You got to be able to add or remove spots easily and always know the real-time count of what's available. This is a state management nightmare. And here's where the two philosophies really diverge. With the Faas approach, pretty much everything you do means going back to that central database. You want to update a spot status, you write to the database. You want to reserve a spot, you got to scan the whole database to find an empty one. You want to know how many spots are available? You have to query the entire database table and count the rows. Now look at the OOAS side. You just call a method on the specific object. Spot.setStatus, lot.reserveSpot, lot.getAvailableCount. See the difference? The logic isn't scattered across a bunch of random functions. It's neatly packed inside the objects that actually represent the parking spots and the lot itself. It just makes more sense.
Okay, so we've seen these two approaches go head to head. What's the bottom line here? What's the big takeaway?
Look, the key thing to remember is that this isn't about one being better than the other. It's about picking the right tool for the right job. Fast is an absolute beast for stateless, event-driven tasks. If you're just processing data or running a simple API, it's fantastic. But OaaS is designed to simplify your life when you're building complex, stateful applications. It really comes down to a choice of where you want to manage complexity. Do you want to manage it in all your different functions and external databases, like with Faas? Or do you want to manage it inside the stateful objects themselves, like with OaaS? The whole point of OaaS is to make life easier for developers building these big, state-heavy systems.
And all this raises a really fascinating question, doesn't it? When you think about the evolution of computing, it's kind of interesting. The serverless revolution really started by blowing everything up into these tiny, separate functions. But now with something like OaaS, it feels like we're swinging the pendulum back. We're starting to bundle that logic and data back together into these coherent objects. It really makes you wonder, are the best new ideas sometimes just old ideas that we're finally ready to look at in a new light?